Welcome to the Mind Muse podcast. I'm your host, Christy Turley, and today Lisa Liberatore joins me as we discuss the 7 pillars of navigating a crisis. We'll hear Lisa's perspective on the power of transparency and why she thinks it's on a spectrum of what to share with others and what not to share. How she herself navigated a crisis that affected her both personally and professionally, the question she asked herself when she was choosing between throwing in the towel or continuing on with business, and a lot of other great topics like the power of the pause, gratitude, positivity, self-forgiveness, boundary creation, and service to others. Now, Lisa is a serial entrepreneur with a master's degree in educational leadership. She founded and later sold a tea company. She's the founder of a restaurant selling burritos, also a co-working space, and most recently co-managing director of Scratchpad Accelerator. She also authored the book, The Power of Transparency, and is just a really interesting, fascinating human being and super successful entrepreneur. So let's go ahead and dive into today's episode. All right, welcome to the show, Lisa.
Thank you.
So today we're going to be talking about navigating a crisis, and it's really about any kind of rapid change. Of course, we've been through some global changes, even some changes here in the United States with conversations around diversity and inclusion. And it seems like every couple of weeks there's something new, something. The tone of the world has changed, and we've got to, as entrepreneurs, be able to respond to that level of change that is happening in the marketplace with our customers and be able to know what to say and when to say it. And for some of us, we could be still feeling the pains of COVID-19 and feeling like we're still trying to find our way. If one thing is true, it is the one constant is change. And I feel like what we're up against is rapid change. Like that's the difference. Like now it's like, oh, quick, we got to learn how to, the buzzword now is pivot. And so I'm excited to hear your insights around this. Do you want to start off and just tell people a little bit about what you do? And also, you have a personal story that I know is on your heart that you want to share too around dealing with crisis.
Sure. So I have an undergraduate degree in child development, and I have a master's in college administration. I worked as a career counselor. That career lasted about 1.5 years. I had the fantastic opportunity to to be able to match students and employers and really build an incredible network for the institution that I worked for. But I didn't feel fulfilled. And I was very grateful. My husband said, well, then just take a leap. You want to open a business, like I can support us. So I founded Baxter Tea Company. It was an online coffee and tea company. I expanded into a retail location. I added a fundraising division, a wholesale, and then created Lisa's Legit Burritos. We didn't have a little to-go Mexican restaurant within a half-hour radius of where I was living. And so I bought my first investment property. My husband was incredible and supportive on all of these adventures. So I owned 2 businesses. And a couple weeks before I had my son, I sold Baxter Tea Company because the reality was that I could not manage both, and the restaurant was still in its infancy. So that company is still living, and I'm really proud of it. So my son was with me. We were at the restaurant every day, and then we opened a second location. And the businesses just kind of grew. And I had the opportunity to write The Power of Transparency. And that is a story about being a mom and being an entrepreneur and juggling all of the things. And then the day after my son's second birthday, my husband, we came home and the car was packed and he was leaving. So he was my business partner and my partner. So everything, all of the plans, running 2 restaurants, we had multiple properties at this point, and again, a 2-year-old was on me, and how are we going to do this? And so, again, leveraging my network and letting people know that this was a really hard time. I was on the city council. I was the president of the Main Street. So I was a very public person. And so kind of navigating and using that transparency on what is appropriate information for my customers and the public to know versus my friends. And so really, being very conscientious about that as I navigated it, because at the end of the day, that is my son's father, and I will forever love him and appreciate the time that we had together. And so tried to treat the whole process with respect, even though you want to scream sometimes. So, but that experience really forced me to grow. I could not run 2 restaurants and do all of the things. It just was not working. I was exploring closing one of my restaurants, and I hated it. It made me feel really sad. I knew it wasn't the right reason because my restaurants were successful. It was my personal life that was failing. And that wasn't fair. And so I was very thankful to come across a program, an Accelerator program, to help me think through my options. And by the end of it, I had created a licensing agreement, and I had brought on partners. So my restaurants are still running 9 and 7 years later. I have incredible partners, and I was able to take that opportunity to be able to move back to my hometown and to help run Maine's first seed accelerator, working with companies that have $100 million markets or more, getting them ready to go out and raise equity. And then I happen to open a co-working space and do some consulting. And so my life has truly transformed as a result of having a crisis presented to me and taking that opportunity and saying, okay, so how do we grow from this? What can we learn? How can we improve? And there's that pivot, right? The buzzword pivot. How do I pivot my life so that I have the opportunity to keep growing? And I had the opportunity to be the commencement speaker at the University of Maine's graduate school. And the story that I kind of told was this one. And I said, as long as you're using happiness as your guide, it will all come together. So it's those gut checks. It's making those hard decisions and walking away when it's time to walk away. It was really hard selling my tea company. It was really hard saying goodbye to my restaurants and saying goodbye to the town that I worked so hard and loved so much. But these are part of what needed to happen to grow. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I want to break this down a little bit and unpack it because you actually said a lot throughout your story, and I see these like pillars of navigating a crisis coming through. One, you mentioned transparency, and so I want to unpack that a little bit. And you mentioned a couple others, which we'll get to, but let's start with transparency. So, I mean, obviously, this is a very personal thing that was happening where your husband left you and your child, and you have all these things that you've got going on with business and customers and employees you had to reach out to, and how like transparency is one of those words that I feel like people throw around, like, let me be transparent with you. And you're like, yeah, whatever comes next is probably not that transparent. What does transparency actually mean? And how did you choose what to share and what not to share?
So transparency to me means acknowledging the current situation. So um, if I just, got off the phone and I'm like clearly distracted, if I'm trying to talk to you, I'm acknowledging it. I'm acknowledging that I can't talk about something, but yes, I seem off. It is not you. Please don't read into it, because that's what humans do. Most humans are constantly going to assign blame to themselves if the other person seems aloof or defensive. And it really, so transparency to me is being able to communicate effectively to the degree that it is important for that other person to know. So my staff needed to know more facts than my customers. Like, here is what's going on. Here are some boundaries that need to be set. Please, I need you to have them, please help respect my privacy. And then it's also the ability to be able to effectively just communicate a broader message that, the restaurant's not going anywhere. I'm sorry, somebody called out sick and my son is sleeping, so we're closed for a couple of hours. Like, please come back and support me. So, it's not putting out all of the details, but it's putting out enough information that people feel that they know what is going on and that they can be, that they can feel valued. And so, and so transparency really is a spectrum. It is not tell everybody everything, because that's just kind of, I think, being a gossip. And there's very few people that knew all of the details because they didn't need to know. What do you need to know? And I'm going to communicate that amount of information to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's key. The other thing that I'd like to unpack a little bit here is throwing in the towel. We're taught, not to quit, to stay with things. And, there were a couple of instances that you mentioned, selling a company, which, that's in a way, quitting that,
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
sold it, right? It was something you loved and you gave it up. Another thing was when you closed, that other location down. Like, how did you navigate that? Like, what
So I
what
didn't
were some of the
close that one.
questions you asked yourself? Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't close that one, but I thought about it.
Oh,
And
got it.
so
Okay.
so I got to the point where I got to a breaking point, and I'm like, okay, what are my options? And so, because sometimes you don't know. And that's where, another thing that I did through this whole thing was pull in other experts, right? I know that I need help in this area. I'm not the expert. So where can I get that knowledge to then help me make decisions? So so for me, it's really just being honest with myself and what could I handle. I had a very easy pregnancy, and every time I went to the doctor, she's like, you've literally never asked me a question. You're going to have a child and your life is going to change. Like, have you processed this? So, it took a long time for me to to recognize how much it was going to change. But when I did that, then it was like, okay, it was very hard to sell my tea company, but I knew it was going to die on the vine. And I knew that I only have so much energy and time, especially with the newborn. And so I had to put it into my newest venture. And like, that's just where it needed to be. And so, trying to honor and acknowledge my feelings, but also not let them guide it, but to try to really just to boil it down to as many facts as possible, and then make a decision always following like my gut, but not letting it just emotionally drive me in one direction or the other.
Yeah,
So
I feel like what people say to like going with your gut versus like emotions, it's interesting because our emotions are good indicators. But I feel like when you're in a crisis, uh you've got to almost, and tell me if you agree or not, but like you've almost got to heal that, like get it to a place of neutral so that you can hear a clear answer from your intuition. Otherwise, your emotions can somewhat cloud your path. Do you agree? Or
yeah,
did you?
100%.
Okay.
And I think everything is so raw in a crisis,
Yeah.
that Yes, exactly. Until you can calm down, you just need to, you don't know the facts, you don't know the road. Like, there is, all you know is everything that you had is going to be gone in one way or another. The bank accounts are closing, the house is probably like everything is shifting. And so to be able to sit with that and to be able to make plans based on the facts, like these are the things that need to get done, and then processing the emotions on how those affect that, and try to really try to just be as intentional as possible. And so when we did mediation, I brought a picture of my son and I put it between us. And like, we are here for him. Everything we do is to provide the best possible life for this little boy. And so that is how I have chosen to, have that relationship with my ex-husband, and have that relationship with my business partners. Everything we are doing, it's for our customers, or it's for this nonprofit, whatever it is. Like, this is where our focus should be, and how we're making our decisions. The decision isn't about how I feel or how you feel. It's about the whatever the object or person or entity that we're having the discussion about.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And what came to mind when you were telling me about the mediation with your ex-husband and having that picture of your child, it if I were to universalize that, it's like you are making decisions from your future self. Like, what would my future self do here? And it gets you out of that present moment, gets you out of that present emotion that you might be feeling, and helps you step back a little bit and see the big picture and recognize what's the most important, in that case your son, and making the best possible decisions for his future. So um that's another one right there, another gem, as far as how to navigate a crisis. What other things can we look at when we're navigating through a breaking point, an event that has shaken us to our core? What other things can help?
I think acknowledging that growth has to happen. That, it is very easy to kind of get into a place where you're growing professionally, but you're growing within a safety zone. And so it is incredibly, I think, painful and uncomfortable when you get that like big shot. But with that, if you, for me, it's thinking about my future self. Okay, this is an incredible opportunity. If he hadn't have left me, there is a very good chance that I would still be living in central Maine, and I would still have restaurants, and I maybe would have gotten another one, or I maybe would have done, but I would have not reached what I have reached as a result of him leaving. And so and then bringing on my partners, like, that was incredibly painful to when I go into the restaurant, those aren't mine anymore. Like, I founded them, but that is, like, that's theirs. And so that's very painful, but with that is also an incredible upside, and the upside might be unknown, but it's great because I get to paint that picture. I get to say, what broadly do I want in my life? Who do I want in my life? What is this going to look like? And I've been able to have the most amazing business partners come into my life, and to be able to create more businesses with them, and to reach, like I said, potential that I never thought I would have if I wasn't for the crisis. So I think it's just being able to change the lens on, is a crisis good or is it bad? If you had
Yeah.
to pick one or the other.
Yeah, well, and I think that in every, this sounds, so cliche, but in every cloud there's a silver lining. And Napoleon Hill said in his book Think and Grow Rich that, every challenge, every trial has within it a seed of equal or greater benefit. So you can actually profit from your failures, and even redefining failure. I listened to Barbara Corcoran. She has a TED talk on failure, and she says that, failure and innovation are kissing cousins, and look at just the illustration of your story, your background. The worst possible thing came true, but actually it ended up being the best possible thing, because you wouldn't be where you are right now without that.
It's so true. I mean, in December I stepped away from the Seed Accelerator to build my own first scalable company, and I was getting ready to launch again when COVID struck. And so at this point, my co-founder is a data scientist. She's incredible. We worked so hard to build this, and we were getting ready to recruit, and now it's sitting with this isn't the time. And it could be very easy to to be really upset and really angry, but it's like, no, we still built this, it's still here, and when the time is ready, and when the economy gets better and when things turn around, I can then use it. And so I think it's also looking at life and at experiences as opportunities to learn, but they might not all be deployed. And so, the number of business ideas that I run to ground on a weekly or monthly basis, right? And then you see like one emerge. But for me, they're learning opportunities, it's experiences to be able to go out and to research and to grow. But it's having the framework to be able to kind of make those decisions quickly. Because I have 6 businesses, and they all blew up. And so the path to stability is unknown for more for some than others. And to be able to sit with, we're not making decisions. We're not making we're closing decision yet. Right now, we have to just keep sitting. We have enough money right now to do that. And it's not fun to sit in that ambiguity. But it would be irresponsible for us to pull a plug on a business when you don't know what's around the corner. I don't know if anyone does, and so, the best laid plans, you need to have them. And we've got about 10 contingencies. And, this is, so it's weird to kind of kick the can down the road, but there's also times when that's what you have to do, is you have to allow yourself that space to gather more information and to study and to really understand the landscape that you're competing in.
Yeah, I so agree. And sometimes we're not comfortable with that silence. We're not comfortable with that inactivity or that rest or that reflection. And it is so important. It's like when we breathe, we inhale and we exhale. We don't just exhale. And
Right.
we've got to find that balance. And especially when you're going through a crisis, or you've hit, burnout or a breaking point of some sort. Sometimes that's exactly what you need. You need to regather your energy, wait until you have more information or you have something to respond to, and then move forward.
Yeah. I
And
mean, entrepreneurs usually move fast, right? And so it's
yeah,
very challenging to be in this slow period. But for what's really helped me is to really focus on my son. He's 7. And so I really try. I'm like, there's things that I can't control. Most of the decisions that are happening with my company is like, there's not a lot to do day to day, right? I mean, right now it's a wait and see for a lot of them. And so why should I put my energy there? Why don't I pause and really get so focused on my son? So when, like, let's play basketball, like, let me be present, let me explore his world, and let me have that opportunity, because it's an incredible blessing. Before COVID struck, I had 3 hours a day with him, an hour in the morning and then 2 hours before bed. And I mean, it's just incredible, like, how much we've grown and how much we've been able to support each other through this, and really grow, I think, as a mother and as a son, and just as humans.
hmm, yeah, and I feel like, again, it's worth mentioning, anytime there's something that seems like it's awful or it's horrible, like as bad as COVID has been, like a lot of people have felt the same way about their families and being around their families more. And when, businesses are opening up again, there can be a little bit of sadness that you're not going to be around your family anymore as much. And so it's so important to be grateful and practice gratitude no matter your circumstances, because there's always something to appreciate, and it could be totally different the next day. I saw
Yeah.
a quote, actually, I'll just share this briefly, and then I'm going to ask you another question. But I saw this meme, and it said something like, you know, be sure to say thanks for anything that you would like. What if you woke up tomorrow and only the things that you said that you were thankful for the previous day were here? Something to that effect. Makes you think, really being
Mhm.
appreciative of just even the small things. Clean drinking water, for example. There's countries that don't have clean drinking water. So just a really good reminder to be grateful. And that seems to be another pillar of navigating a crisis. It's the hardest thing to feel when you're going through just crap, just awful turmoil. And it seems so ludicrous to be grateful, but just if you could find one thing to be grateful about, the fact that you can breathe, that air, you're alive, being grateful. So anything you want to say about gratitude or?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
go
we
ahead.
practice a lot of gratitude. My son actually started a business. We built a website, and it's focused on 30% goes to purchase snacks for kids in need. So we talk about gratitude, and when he's on his third breakfast and it's 9:30, I said, "Look at the clock. Kids don't get food till 11:30." And so, I've taken him to the school a couple of times to get the free breakfast and lunch that they're handing out, and I was like, "This is all the food these kids get." And so we really do need to practice gratitude, and we need to also give to others. When you have something, you need to be able to be grateful for it, and then to share responsibly. That there's, that we need to take care of other people. If we have a position of privilege and of power, we need to be able to ensure that we're making it a 10x effect on others. So that's been, I love watching my son grow as an entrepreneur, doing his little YouTube videos, watching how he presents himself and how he thinks about and uses positivity. It's really exciting to see. And, we just need more of it right now. We
I
really,
agree. I
we
agree.
really
And,
do.
also, I think just to mention too, I mean, gratitude does really change everything. And when you realize how blessed you are, the natural inclination is to want to share it with others. And that love is what unites us. It's what is going to help all of us get through this time. And just another thing about serving others, sometimes when you're in this, dark place, it seems like the last thing to do would be to serve someone else. But sometimes that's the exact thing that you need to help you get out of your head and help you get, out of your comfort zone. And it you can't help but feel love and feel happier when you're in the service of others. So I totally agree, paying it forward and serving others. Do you want to add to that? No?
No,
Okay.
I'm
So let's wrap up here. I'd love for you to tell us how we can learn more about you. And then after you tell us that, why don't you go ahead and end us off with your final thought, your final nugget of wisdom for us today.
Oh, geez. You can go to the powertransparency.com. And that's where you can see my bio. I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn. And I think for a final thought, I think that the biggest thing that I would recommend everyone do is to really manage your own expectations and those of others, and be really clear about about your own expectations. What can you handle, and really clearly communicate that. So I don't like clutter, and that is a problem. That is my problem. So when somebody doesn't quickly pick something up, I have to remind myself that that is not their priority. This is my priority. And so if I, and so what are those expectations and what's reasonable? Again, thinking more about the other person and like, how are we going to make this partnership work? And then, practicing self-forgiveness is so incredibly important. There's some days that you're going to be amazing and you're going to be like, wow. And then there's other days that like, it's just not going so well. And to be like, it's okay. It is okay. You had dessert again every night in quarantine. It is okay. This is what you need. So practicing self-forgiveness, allowing yourself to to not be perfect and to be able to set boundaries with others. I think boundaries are really important right now in a crisis. Everything is just so murky and confusing. There are no real lines. Everything's been taken away. So this is an opportunity for you to really assess those things and create new rules and expectations, and also ask people how they communicate. I think some of the biggest challenges is miscommunication, and so I am not very good at reading and analyzing things. I am much better spoken. Like that is how I process information. So if I'm going to be successful on a team, I'm going to communicate that to you and hope that we can work together, because there's going to be a lot of gaps and a lot of frustration on both sides if we don't acknowledge where the other person is coming from. So I think it's really just use this time to take an inventory of yourself and be able to kind of go through those steps, and then communicating it out to others, because there's a lot of incredible things to come. But you got to be ready. In order to be ready, you need to know yourself and what you need and want.